people who accidentally ruin someone's life without wanting to. What happened, and what do you feel now? My best. A childhood friend came up with a stupid plan to run away from home at night, getting out through the window of my room. We have knitted together sheets, made a rope like in the movies, and lowered it from the window of my bedroom on the 3rd floor. She volunteered to go first, and when she completely climbed out of the window and hung in the air, the knots were untied. I watched her, fell down in slow motion, and bounced off my water heater onto the grass. I ran out into the street, sure that I would see her unconscious or worse. But to my surprise, she was fine. She got up and walked to the front door. We swore to keep it in secret and not to tell anyone, because we were terribly ashamed. Then we joked about this incident for a long time. In general, we did a lot of stupid and dangerous things in childhood. Time we began to communicate less with her, and now, being already as an adult, she faced many problems that she had not had before, difficulties with memory, social skills, and in general the problems of executive music functions. I often think about her and suspect that her fall from my window played a role in this. When I was 15, my friends and I went to a Kennedy Reds baseball game at the old Riffron Stadium. On this trip, we were together with a large group of high school students, but at the moment we slipped away from the group and persuaded some guy to buy us a beer. When he was handing us beer, a policeman in civilian clothes approached, showed us a badge, and began to ask questions. When a guy doesn't, he began to answer and refused to show his ID. The policeman pulled out the handcuffs, and a scuffle began. He tried to put bracelets on him. As soon as this fuss began, my friends and I took advantage of the moment, ran away, and rejoined our large group in the upper stands on the other side of the stadium. I don't know if it destroyed. This is the life of a dude, but buying beer for us definitely ruined his evening, and I'm sure it cost a lot of legal expenses. I would like to apologize to him. I don't take all the blame, but I played my part in it. I had a boss. A bad boss. He slept with employees, constantly skipped work, drank fiercely. In short, a typical person from his crowd who didn't understand why I was doing so well in sales with my personality type. He was good at. He was kept only because of his connection with a high-ranking leader. But still, the dude was balancing on the brink regularly. He sang on corporates, arranged fights, and so on. Although sometimes he supported me. In the end, he me off. And when his boss came to the city, he was also a shit, but he had to endure. My boss? I laid out everything, said that he slept with the employees, that he did not work at all, and that he was drinking again. A week later, my other boss was fired. A new one came, which was only slightly less disgusting. A couple of years ago, I heard that my former boss, whose dismissal I may have influenced, died of cirrhosis of the liver at the age of 43. It was rumored that he was begging simply, let him die. A year later, the leader who had always covered for him also died. The cause is unknown. In turn, I was a volunteer firefighter for a while. Once we received a call to help doctors. Usually, we just helped them transfer patients. I decided to give up my seat in the car to a newcomer. I thought that since the task is simple, let the guy will feel needed and work together with experienced guys. It seemed nothing serious. It turned out to be in vain. The patient was an elderly man who smoked while sitting in a wheelchair, was dressed in synthetic clothing, and was connected to oxygen. He caught fire. It was necessary to transfer him to a helicopter, but he did not survive the flight. The newcomer saw it all in his very first challenge. After that, he soon left the service. There are things that you will never forget. And he was just a high school student who wanted to help people. I really hope that everything is fine with him now. I've seen it myself. A lot of hard shit, and learned to accept it all. This is the reality of life and death. And when I put on my helmet, I am ready for this. But Selleck was taken by surprise by this situation, because it was his first experience, and he was not there for it. Prepared? I suggested that my girlfriend stop by Starbucks on her way to work and bought her tea to treat her sore throat. The lid flew off the glass, and it was all poured with boiling water. She had to stay in the hospital for 2 weeks to have a transplant. Skin, and I could not help her. Most likely, she will have scars for life. The story is not mine, but my ex's. Colleagues. That colleague used to work as a manager in another company, and he had an employee who I couldn't cope at all. He gave her a lot of chances, but she still failed the job. As a result, he accepted the decision to dismiss her. She was heartbroken. The girl loved the company and worked very much, begged to leave her, but he refused. Several weeks passed. She received a new offer on the other side of the country. She had to fly to interview. She ended up in one of the planes that crashed into the Gemini Tower on the way to that interview. Of course, he could not have foreseen this, but the feeling of guilt haunted him for a long time. What if he waited a couple more weeks before being fired? Maybe she would have started looking for a job later, and would not have ended up in that plane? This story stuck in my head for a long time. 20 years ago, I worked at the university as a computer specialist. Once a colleague said that she was checking a very interesting master's thesis, and asked if I could find some authors from the list of references. Back then, almost nothing was online, and to find something, you had to have a really cool search skill. I went through a bunch of strange links, and found an article that was linked to by one of the chapters. It turned out that the whole chapter is, in fact, one big quotation. The student simply replaced everything with the author. For example, I researched, the author researched. But this, of course, does not work like that. All this happened literally on the eve of the defense. As a result, a huge scandal broke out. Students were expelled, but since formally he had already completed training, he couldn't repeat a year or something. To get a master's degree, he would have to re-enter another department. Of course, it wasn't my fault, but the realization that it was my actions that played a key role in his failure, albeit fair, left a strange feeling. I filed for divorce when I found out that my wife had been changed. Plus, her alcoholism played a role. After the divorce, she immediately tried to get along with the one with whom I cheated on married men with children. During their next drunken quarrel, she called the police and filed a false complaint against him. Application. She tried to do the same thing to me, but then it was proven to be a lie. That man, being drunk, he panicked and committed suicide. The ex did not have a drop of guilt. On the contrary, in social networks, she presented herself as a victim, begging for sympathy. As a result, 2 children were left without a father, and his wife lost even though shitty, but still a husband. I only feel sorry for his family. I am sure that I saved my own life by walking away from her and not trying to work on relationships. A month after our divorce, she managed to trick someone else in. A man in marriage, got pregnant, bought a house. A year later, this man wrote to me on social networks, asking for advice on a good one. Divorce lawyer, and wanted me to testify against her. She gave up her parental rights when she saw my name in court papers. A couple of years ago, we needed to move. The house stood on a very busy street, and around the crossing there was a lot of nuances. I had to apply for all sorts of permits. There was a shop on the ground floor of the house. parking spaces were booked. Everything was so stressful that one wrong move could ruin the whole plan. At first, everything seemed to be going smoothly. The only thing is that people were constantly parking in our reserved area before our trucks drove up there. Most left a phone number on the front window. We called them, and they left. But just before my father arrived, 4 cars took our place. They did not leave the license plates, and we did not find the owners of the transport nearby either. It was completely impossible to remove them, which meant that my father would not be able to park the van, and we would not be able to take out my things, with which we had already tightly sealed the narrow corridor and the beginning of the stairs. Dragging everything back to the 4th floor was simply unrealistic. I had about 40 minutes left to resolve this issue, and I called the police. Cops. They arrived in 15 minutes, began to write fines, and said that they were calling a tow truck. Half an hour later, a tow truck drove up, and several car owners showed up at the same time. Shouts began, showdowns with the police. Suddenly, 6 more cops drove up. It turned out that in one of the illegally parked cars they found prohibited substances, and the owner of the car. I worked in a hookah bar across the street. He was detained and began to wait for a warrant for a hookah bar. Meanwhile, one policeman kept the entire flow of cars, and even the tram so that my father could park the van. There were still arguments on the street, there was complete chaos around, and I was just on my nerves. At some point, the policeman asked if there were always tables on the street at a nearby eatery. It turned out that this was also illegal, and they immediately took up the matter. As a result, 4 drivers received hefty fines and paid for the tow truck. Cafe. Lost street tables. The hookah lounge was closed, and that guy with the illegal shit was most likely arrested. And that's it. This is only because the Cellists have taken our parking space. It wasn't entirely coincidental, but I didn't know what it was. We'll turn around when she filed a complaint against a high-ranking manager for harassment. This man was engaged in reconstructions in a supermarket chain. He lost his job and pension payments, and he was very close to retirement. The man pestered all the young employees, and another manager even pushed us to write a complaint. Dude got what he deserved. When I was in high school, my friend and I tried to go to an MLB game. It was a little bit. Smartphones used to appear, and the dude didn't have a navigator in his car, so we got lost. We haven't communicated for a couple of years, but then we met at a party. I jokingly remembered how we got lost then. It turned out that he did not say parents where we went. His mom saw the bills for the toll roads we used to ride on in search of the right one, and decided that it was his father who went there to cheat on her. As a result, my father slept on the couch for a whole year, until it did not dawn on my friend that our trip played an important role in their family quarrels. When he told me all this, they seemed to have already reconciled. And most likely, it was not only about road bills. But it was wild to find out that too. Stupid attempts to go to baseball could contribute to the destruction of a marriage. The story is not about me, but about my husband. It was the reason my parents got divorced. We were still engaged then. I arrived at work, and when I turned off the car, she just died, as if she had taken her last breath, and that's it. I called groom. He came, called a tow truck, and took the car to the service. He did all this while I was at work. Later I told my mother about it, and she was amazed. He just took it and did everything. He didn't get angry, he didn't grumble that he had to do this. If this happened to me, your father would. Of course I helped, but I would have been furious and would have definitely found something to blame me for. A week later, my mother left Dad. To be honest, this was their second divorce. But at that moment, my mother suddenly understood everything completely. Methinks that if I hadn't left the state, my mother wouldn't have died of an overdose. And maybe it's true, but now I have. It was a good life, and I just couldn't stay there. However, I have been carrying this feeling of guilt with me for 10 years. I was 14. Together with my boyfriend, I was visiting a friend at home. My friend and I are white, and the guy is black. Her father is a racist, having accidentally seen how he kissed me, kicked us out of the house. A friend really wanted me to stay, but it wasn't mine house. I couldn't insist, although now I think it was worth asking my friend to leave with us. Perhaps this would be something. Changed. We left, and her father seemed to be off the chain. Mom came home from work and saw him strangling my friend. After, his mother left him, and he and my friend lived elsewhere for some time, until the friend got into trouble. Relationship with an older guy and did not allow him to make me sick. As a result, he was forced to marry her. He married and he went to serve in the army. They had 2 children, and then she divorced him. The last time we talked, she dated a man who was nice, except for those moments when he was drinking. Most likely it came out for him, because now she has a different last name. Her daughter constantly goes to court, and her son died of frowning. I also sold it. Her grandson is in prison for murder. Changed. Thank you all for your kind words, but it seems to me that the feeling that I was also involved in all this would never leave me. I work in a public library. Once, in the peculiarities of our system of lending books, I accidentally reported to some poor guy that it looks like a divorce is waiting for him. His wife ordered several books on how to file a divorce on your own, and they have. There was a shared account. When I called their landline number, it was the only one in the account. Picked up the phone. Husband. I said that their ordered books had arrived, and he asked which ones. Without thinking, I listed all the names. A book about divorce in Mike Hagan, a book about divorce, what every spouse in Mike Hagan should know, and so on. There were a few. 5. It became clear that a bachelor life awaited him. We generally do not disclose private account information to users, including what books they read. But if people share the same account, we just don't know who made the order. And technically, all information is available to everyone who is on this account. I understand that I am not to blame for the fact that he is divorcing, but I am uncomfortable with the way he found out about it. I am still embarrassed in front of this man. In high school, they removed large scenery after a talent show and put one large structure under the stairs. She was long and awkward shape, so it stuck out from the side and partially blocked the passage. It wasn't the most crowded place, and we were in a hurry, so we left everything as it was. Later I heard that a friend of mine tripped over this thing, hit her face, and had to be treated by a dentist. Hardly anyone ever knew that I was one of those who I put it there. In elementary school, I slapped a boy in the face who kept lifting my skirt. His mother after this one made a scandal. In general, the parents were called to school after I explained what had happened. My dad said, "I don't see anything wrong with my daughter standing up for herself and hitting a boy who violated her boundaries. Dad, I love you." I started dating my therapist, and one of her friends found out. It is strongly. I got angry, although we had already broken up by that time, and snitched on her to the professional association. Now she was deprived of her license, and she will no longer be able to practice. Changed. I know everyone says it's all her fault, but I feel great guilt. Yes. As a result, that relationship hurt me. I don't want to go into details. I just wanted to move on, and the process of investigation has harshly invaded my life. They asked for my medical records, called my family, forced me to testify. I did not ask for all this. I just wanted to be left alone. A friend filed a complaint out of anger. She didn't like that this therapist didn't want to be with her anymore. Be friends. I didn't want to hurt anyone anymore. This situation is not over yet, and I sincerely wish so that all this does not happen at all. I didn't ruin my life, but I challenged the eviction. The lawyer was a complete asshole. There was no reason for eviction, so he just made up a bunch of things. Dude in general. He deals with inheritance cases, not evictions, so I could hold out for almost a year. His client, the landlord, was so angry that he refused his services. Then this lawyer began to pursue me and managed to get me evicted from a new home, where everything happened again, and his new client is also from him. Refused. His reputation in the city collapsed. As a result, the man changed the name of his law firm. Oh, I've got history. I was about 19 years old. I was riding my bike to work, and I was hit by a pickup truck of a landscape crew leaving with filling. The two guys in the car apologized endlessly. They picked me up, checked the bike, offered to give me a ride, and that's it. Great guys, and I was fine. I was just shocked. But some woman in the parking lot called police. It turned out that they did not have documents. The police arrested both of them and took the pickup truck to the impound lot, and a fine was issued for improper cycling. I'm still embarrassed. If I had come to my senses a little faster and simply left, they would have had time to hide before the cops arrived, and they would not have had all these problems. Everything happened in less than 5 minutes from the impact to the appearance of the police. It seems that the police appear quickly only when no one needs it. There was one guy from school that I knew. We studied with him in almost all classes from kindergarten to the end of school. We were not friends, but we were like that. Good acquaintances, never spoke, but treated each other well. When I was about 25, he wrote to me FB. We chatted for a while, and at one point he asked if he could change with me until get his life back on track. I answered vaguely, as if I wanted to help, but my younger sister, she knew his brother. She said that it was not worth it. I have never had a problem with him, but I trusted her opinion and refused him. A year later, in News published an article that he committed suicide. I understand that I didn't ruin his life, but I still feel like creepy. I thought I was doing the right thing in this story. In high school, I had a group of friends with whom we had lunch every day. We all lived within 2 or 3 neighboring blocks, so it makes sense that we hung out both at school and after. Let's call one of these guys Dan. Once for lunch, a girl from my military training class came up to me with her boyfriend and asked me to talk. I asked, "What happened?" She said, "Why are you communicating with that guy?" And she, "You know that he harassed me." "Yes," I said. No one has ever told me that. Why didn't anyone?" She, "I don't know. I thought everyone knew." I said, "Did you say that?" And she said no, because I thought that the police would not do anything anyway. Then I asked when it happened. She replied for about a month back. Later that day, I was on my way to another lesson and shared with a classmate that I didn't know whether to report it or not. She made the decision herself when we passed by the office of the head of the military. She just pushed me into the door. I almost fell, LL. But once I was there, I told him everything I had heard. He listened to me very much carefully, made notes, and at the end said, "Okay, don't worry, I'll take care of everything." 2 to 3 days passed, silence. Then I was summoned to the director. In the office sat the director, the head of military training, and 2 policemen. They were very kind to me. They said that they interviewed all the participants, and everyone, including the girl herself, confirmed that nothing had happened. Nobody has it. Molested. I was afraid that I would be punished for a false report or for allegedly making everything up. Although I believe that. I'm telling the truth. After all, I was a child. But they said, "No, there won't be any problems. You did the right thing. That he came to us. We just wanted to let you know the results of everything that happened." It turned out that the girl had made it up. This and much more. She ended up having to leave the state because she could no longer attend school. Her. Harshly persecuted. Apparently, she made up different stories about different people, and it all turned out to be untrue. I don't. I regret what I did, but I definitely didn't want it to turn out this way. I just thought I was doing the right thing. Music, I unwittingly made 2 different women realize that in the 2 different relationships they were in, they were actually unhappy and unsatisfied. One was preparing for a wedding, and the other had been married for 20 years. My father once said to me, "I will say this, there was no yours in the divorce. Guilt, but once you said something that made me realize that the problems in my marriage didn't just exist in my head. Others have seen them too." My ex-boyfriend was an abuser, an alcoholic. After another quarrel at night, I turned it off. Phone while he slept. I know that he has an important meeting at his corporate work in the morning. Drunk, he overslept and missed meeting. As a result, he was fired. While he was at work, I packed my things and moved out. Honestly, I don't feel guilty. I got information that one foreign graduate student is in college and has his own child. I was asked to report this to the local newspaper. I passed on the information. It was published that guy was fired. He flew home, and the plane crashed into Everett. No one survived. I don't reproach myself too much. He was a bad man, but what happened was not only because of me. But sometimes I am overcome by strange feelings when I realize that mine. His actions contributed to his death to some extent. Once my friend and I were sitting in college and chatted. Gradually, more and more people sat down with us. As a result, there were about 10 of us, and we just talked. Come to me. One person sat down, and the conversation turned to memes. I jokingly said, "The best meme in history is Miss Spaghetti." And many agreed. At that moment the guy's eyes lit up. He said happily, "If you like this, then I can. To give something else for a price." And I joked, "Not something like my little PY haha." He looked at me as if I had killed his dog. Immediately, realizing that I had said too much, I tried to smooth over the situation, but it was too late. The girls next to me sarcastically asked, "You're the guy who wears a pony t-shirt, aren't you?" Clattered contemptuously. I confessed that my brother made me watch one episode, and it was okay. But the guy is already all drooped. Until the end of the semester, I never heard him talk about anything else. And then I also especially. I didn't notice. I understand that nothing terrible happened, but sometimes I remember this incident. Damn who. Would it occur to show a parody of My Little Pony to a company of 20-year-old students? Oh yes, I told you something else. One dude about Bitcoin before the very first big crash. After that, he also disappeared. But at least I am there. He warned that the investment is risky. Thank you very much for watching. In the comments under the video, write how you ruined the life of another person. And don't forget to check out our other videos. See you tomorrow. Embraced. So long.